Have you read How to Make Money in Stocks?
I haven't, no.
So pretty much what that book is, William O'Neill, he's featured in the first Market Wizards, so one of the best traders of our of the last few generations. And what he did was he looked at all the biggest winning stocks of his time and of the past. And I think he started in the 1950s or something. And he looked at the characteristics of what created the big winners. And he found, and that's where canceling comes from. And just quickly what that acronym stands for, if you're not familiar with the How to Make Money in Stocks book, it's current earnings. So current earnings and revenues. And he looked for 25% year-over-year growth. Of course, the more sustainable that is, the better. A is annual earnings. Also, he slides in return on equity in there as well. N is new product, just something new. Hot narrative, hot theme, new product, new service, new management, some sort of some sort of uniqueness about the business. Cancel them. S is supply and demand. So price action, price and volume, looking at the charts, all the chart patterns that he talks about in there. And then L is leader or laggard. You want to be trade the leading stocks, which is stocks, during a bear market correction that are showing relative strength, building the base, building higher lows, the relative strength lines heading to new highs. Those are the ones you want to focus on because when the pressure at the market lifts off, those are the ones to make those big moves. I is institutional quality or institutional ownership, sorry. And that's just like looking at how many funds own the company. If funds are accumulating and that number of ownership is increasing, you have institutional support. So price structure, price levels are more likely to be supported. And then M is the market, which is arguably the most important. You want to be trading these in a good general market, good market sentiment, because 75% of stocks follow the general market. So if you're fighting that wind, it's not going to really work out for you.
So you'd say by having that as a core principle, as a foundation, it allows you to just really have a focus on what works and what doesn't.
And back to you talking about how these principles have stood the test of time. Some of the best quotes, and I'm kind of paraphrasing from Livermore, from all the market wizards that we're familiar with and have studied. It's that, market participants change, the stock tickers change, companies change, but human psychology and supply and demand never change because it's the laws of supply and demand, and human psychology is not going to change over 100, 150 years. We've been programmed through tens of thousands of years of evolution. And, being a biology major, evolutionary biology, it takes time for us to evolve. Maybe we will with, Neuralink and all these chips coming in the future. We'll see. Yeah.
So, going on from there then, and I paused you to really look at these books. So from there, what did that scale and journey look like? When you started to identify these principles, learn these principles, the implementation of that, was it as simple as it sounds, or did you have to really adjust to what you were doing before to this new way of looking at the markets?
It definitely takes a lot of introspection and reflection, but I would say because I had that period of experience in the markets of not knowing what I was doing and just like being in the markets with real money, like experiencing the ups and downs, all the emotions, it's much easier to understand when you read the books and the principles that these guys are sharing about risk management, human psychology, position sizing, and just the overall awareness of the general market. So like no matter what, you can't, like just reading the books or taking courses, it's not going to work. Like you need to be in there, like in the arena, as many people say, like the Teddy Roosevelt, like man in the arena. Like you got to be in, experiencing the ups and downs and the drawdowns, as well as the successes as well.
What was your goal coming into trading? Normally this is something that I end up asking later on, but it's quite interesting, I think, for you, because, came into the markets, had this, really positive start, had this drawdown, built a different foundation, entered different markets. What was that like for you in terms of like your goal? Like, what did you have? Like a real big goal for trading?
My goal for trading? Well, I guess we can go back to my childhood a little bit. And obviously, like all traders, portfolio managers, you want to make money, have financial freedom. But like the reason why it was so obvious to me that I had to get out of dental school was because Robert Greene, I'm not sure you're familiar with him. Robert Greene's an author, and he has this book called Mastery.
Yeah.
And I've listened to a lot of his podcasts on that book, and I still have to read it. But he talks about finding that life task of yours. And one exercise he instructs you to do is look back at your childhood, look at what you were obsessed with, what your natural inclinations were. And when I did that, I played soccer or football from where you're from.
Yeah.
Um,
Real football.
from like yeah, from 5 years old to like 18, 19. I decided not to play in college to focus on academics. But to me, sports is a game. I also was addicted to video games growing up too,
Nice.
Call of Duty, Fortnite, FIFA, and for some reason I resonate with anything that has this game like environment. And that, some of those characteristics, competitiveness, there's winning, there's also losing, but there's something to go after. I love winning, competing, beating someone out, and strategic thinking, all of the characteristics you'd find in sports and video games, game theory, like how you and the other person are going to make decisions, like in sports and video games as well. So all of that, I see those applying to the markets, either, well, more so consciously now, but probably more intuitively back then.
Yeah.
And that's probably what drew me into the markets. And I would say for people that want to get into the markets, you really have to love it, because there's people out there that absolutely love it, and they're not just in there for the money, because you're going to have drawdowns. And if you don't love it, you're probably going to quit at the wrong time, right before the market turns out again. So you really just have to love the game. To me, the markets are one of the ultimate games in the world, that and entrepreneurship. And then life is really just a whole big game. So just enjoying it, and through all the ups and downs, you just really have to enjoy it.
So as part of that, do you have a goal with trading of where you were looking back then? I mean, like when it came to you scaling, did you have anything in mind?
Like,
of where
are you talking about like a dollar goal, or
not necessarily dollar, but more so like, did you think back then you wanted to be a professional, managing capital? Did you have any of these sort of notions, or was it literally just, I want to learn how to trade?
When I first started, had no notions. I just enjoyed the game. But as I grew more and more, I got started getting inspired. Actually, I didn't talk about him, but a huge, I guess, indirect mentor of mine, Stanley Druckenmiller, and he's one of the most legendary hedge fund managers of all time. And just him, Buffett, all these great money managers drew me into the business, and so that's why I wanted to get into it, and that's why I went for it.
Definitely, in terms of going from there to then putting yourself in this position, was there a difference in terms of managing your own capital to suddenly you're in this position where you're managing larger capital of other people's money?
Yeah. At least in our business, we're a registered investment advisor. We're SEC registered. Most of our clients are heading into retirement or in retirement. But, with me and Connor coming on board, we've kind of brought in like the Gen Zs and like the younger millennials as well with our social media. But, since we're not a hedge fund, we can't really use leverage. We are more restricted in shorting. Like, we'll use inverse ETFs, but since a lot of accounts are like Roth IRAs, 401ks, there's no margin, so you can't short stocks, like individual stocks. But now with all the inverse ETFs, we can short that way. This is what I say a lot. Managing your own capital, it's just you and your own emotions, and it's your money. But with clients, you also have to manage their emotions. So it's not only managing their capital, it's also managing their emotions. So you're juggling these two things at once, and you have to respond to the emails. You have to kind of guide them through when they're fearful, when they're greedy, like, why don't you have more exposure on, or why aren't you not heading to cash? You have to explain to them that process as well. So I'd say that's the biggest difference. At the same time, it's someone else's money. You don't want to do bad for other people. So there's that extra, layer of pressure as well.
What was the reality of when you first started to do that? Was there an added weight, an added pressure you had to overcome?
So our bosses, Don and Dan, they took a book out of William O'Neill. So for those not familiar with William O'Neill, like with his personal capital, once he grew a decent amount through his like Investors Business Daily business, he hired like 15 to 20 portfolio managers to manage his capital. And my bosses took the same page out. We didn't just get our hands on client money right away. Like, that would not be responsible. We're SEC registered, so SEC's on us. You can't just be handing 22, 23-year-olds your capital with like absolutely like no backing.
Yeah.
So at first, we're just trading our own money as part of the firm. We have these daily calls. We have our morning call where we just like talk about the economic data, various news, what the future is up and down. We go through like, upgrades and downgrades. We have the afternoon call as well. So we just brought our ideas, started slow, learned like the process of asset manager, the business, and just Don's whole process in general. But maybe 6 months into our time at Revere, full time at Revere, Don and Dan carved out a piece of their own money for us to manage.
Okay.
And so we each got our own tracking accounts. and we did pretty well for like 5-6 months. And so after that, they found trust. Not only do we know the knowledge, we could actually execute, manage risk, position size. And we started during a correction. This was late 2023. So it was in that 3-month correction before this, like, to me, the growth bull started late 2023. And then I started managing a little bit of my parents' money. You know, they put some money with the firm as well. So it started slow. Some of my good friends from college took a bet on me as well. So it's like, and then, you know, and my bosses were more willing for me to do my parents' money because my parents were some of my parents' money. And then my good friends, you know, they're fine with that as well. And just over time, more and more clients came in. And me and Connor, you know, through our social medias have brought in a lot of money as well for Revere. And that has also added on to the money we've managed to. And now we run a portfolio called Turbotection, and Don named that. We also have a portfolio called Growtection, and we can get into that, you know, later after we go through like the whole background. Right now, clients who come in will just have like a smaller piece with us because we're more aggressive in nature, and then most of the money will be with Don. So it's like that traditional asset management. You know, we call it pie charts, where if you give money to a traditional asset manager or advisor, they'll have these model portfolios. They'll put you in mutual funds, maybe some stocks as well, and they'll just be hands off and just won't look at it. And maybe there's quarterly rebalancing into new mutual funds. Maybe there's annual rebalancing. But I guess our value add or our mission is to kind of show that timing the markets are possible, getting into cash when the markets weaken, and preventing those devastating 30 to 40, 50% drawdowns, especially for people heading into retirement who need that nest egg to live off of, and definitely people in retirement that solely live off the gains of their nest egg and they don't have income anymore.